Hey everybody, Tony D and Little Joan here with your final video of the evening. Sorry for the late night post. I was gaming all day and got caught up and it just didn't get into my videos. I'm very sorry. But as always, we have a exclusive video on Bitchute and Rumble, and that's the forbidden news. Man, there was a lot of it today. All the topics that YouTube flagged you for. And just a reminder, I'm going to stop doing all political stuff on the YouTube because they just kill it. They just kill the hits. Unless I make some sort of Herculean effort to promote the video, it gets almost nothing. Like, I got a couple of subscribers the other day and I was shocked because I hadn't gotten any in such a long time. I actually lost a bunch of them, and then, with the Derek Chauvin trial. Yeah. Look, I Screenplays and Opinions is the name of my Rumble channel, which I feel is like the best way to describe the kind of stuff I do. I talk about movies and screenplays and writing, and I also talk about like politics and current events or whatever. I just find it interesting and fun. We've had some good discussions, I think, in the comments. People have been pretty civil, I think, for the most part recently. Strap in. Most of the stuff's going to BitChute and Rumble. That's where all the cool stuff is. If you're interested in that, if you just want to talk about movies, whatever, you can stay here and you don't have to see any of that stuff. So, check out the books if you want to support the channel. The links are in the description. And let me give you a little. Let's have Joan say hi. Say hi, Joan. Oh, you had a rough day. You were running around like a little maniac. Yes, you were. Yes, you were, little maniac. All right, you go back to sleep. All right. So, again, there was a lot of forbidden news today. So these are the hot topics that they weren't covering that I could probably talk about on YouTube. Over 1 in 3 Americans rejecting Coca-Cola after Georgia voter integrity interference. That one I can talk about. And I'm not surprised. You guys have stepped in it. And even people, I think, who would generally agree that the voting law is, that they would support people speaking out about it. They don't support corporations doing it. What are you doing, Coke? Why are you so woke and crazy? Okay, it's going to make you some money in the short term. This has been the problem with corporate America for a long time. They chase the short-term money. They forget about the long-term stuff that's going to be good for the company as a whole. And you're going to suffer for it for years to come. For years to come. You're going to be begging people, oh, we're not that way anymore. We've rebranded. We got rid of all those people, blah, blah, blah. You can say, oh, well, people don't really have a long memory. About this stuff they do. I will never forgive the Simpsons for ruining it for me, for going woke. I'll just never forgive them. They can come back to me a million times and I'll just be like, nope, I'm done. I followed the show. I worked on the comics. I loved the show. Loved past tense. And when something goes woke, it breaks your heart. And you don't forget that. And you don't forgive it. So, there's no point. You've broken it. You've broken it. So you've turned Coca-Cola, in my view, into Woca-Cola. People will not forget that for a long, long time. And it's your own damn fault. You could have just stayed out of it. But it's all about money, I think. From NBC, officer captured on video punching a woman. Yeah, and I'm sure NBC is giving it the very unbiased, unvarnished truth that it deserves. I wouldn't trust NBC now at this point. Again, same reason I just said. I just would never go back to ABC, NBC, CBS for news. No, thank you. Oh, 60 Minutes has a special on that'll, investigate something I'm really interested in. No, thanks. I'll find some other source. Thank you. It's just they've tainted themselves. And more people are discovering that every day. every day you keep pushing this woke BS. So, Michigan woman glues her eyes shut after mistaking nail adhesive for eye drops. That's also from NBC. Let me remind the people at NBC something. And perhaps they don't know because they're too young, and some of you are not that young, or are that young. Back in the day, when you looked for serious news, when it was just TV and newspapers, TV just gave you the headlines. The newspaper was the serious news. But we also had National Enquirer, the Daily World News, I think it was called, something like that, which would have crazy headlines and celebrity gossip and all that stuff, was relegated to separate publications that everybody knew were, oh yeah, that's just all BS. That's just all, outrageous stuff. It was fun to read. And even those publications were a little more honest about what they were about. NBC, in my view, and companies like NBC, have been coasting on their credibility for decades. And now you're going to do a story like this about a woman gluing her eyes shut and mistaking the nail adhesive for eye drops? I don't even believe the story. Okay? This is the kind of stuff that would be in those publications, and you just go, it's all BS. They're just trying to get stupid people to buy the newspaper, or people who just want to read outrageous headlines that literally are made up, I think. So this isn't news. This isn't news. It's not. If it's true, it's not great, but it's not news. There are important things happening in the world. There are important things happening right now. Joe Biden looks like he's blowing the Afghan peace accord. Probably won't pull the troops out. He's a doddering old man who's losing his damn marbles. Where's the articles on that? Where's the articles on about Hunter? All the things that are going on. NBC is covering a woman who glued her eyes shut. And I don't even believe that. So, BLM activists threaten cops. You shoot us, we shoot you, after Columbus shooting from American greatness. And the Daily Caller, yeah. Look, and this is Micaiah Bryant again. Micaiah had a knife. She was about to stab another girl. How many times do we have to go through this? How many times do we have to keep saying, there are people who are unjustly killed by the cops. BLM apparently doesn't care about them. They don't care. They only care about shaking people down for money, apparently. I mean, it would be different if BLM was consistent and picked cases on a they had a group of people and they would say, okay, this is the case. This woman was innocent, or this guy was innocent, and he was harassed by the cops and he was injured, or he was killed, or whatever. Instead, it's just whatever's the headline. Boom. You doubling down on this? Okay. I for one, want to see a double down on it because it's so easy to disprove. I could show that videotape to anybody and point to it and say, is this a woman that the cops shouldn't have stopped? Is this a woman who was attacked by the cops unnecessarily? Nobody watching that videotape is going to say, oh yeah, he should have just let it go on. Except radical extremists. I believe that most of this is being pushed by China. They're just pushing and pushing and pushing it because pushing this creates more division. They don't care if Black Lives Matter succeeds or if there's racial justice. They just want chaos. They want Black Lives Matter to cause as much chaos and mayhem as possible. I think they're useful idiots. And if you're involved in Black Lives Matter, you should really rethink it. Or steer them in the other direction if you can. But it doesn't appear that anybody involved in Black Lives Matter cares. They do not care. That you've got that woman who's got mansions, You've got these protesters allegedly on the street saying these outrageous things, threatening people, and you've got people in the establishment who are allowing it to happen. And that's really the most damaging part. Those are the people we need to get rid of in terms of our government. We need to vote them out, have them investigated. They should not be allowing this. They didn't in the past. And yeah, they got flack for it. And sometimes they abuse their power, if not a lot of times. But, you know, and when you talk about abuse of power in terms of law enforcement and prosecution, a lot of times the abuse comes from the fact that they don't have all the evidence and they know they don't have it, but then they go that extra mile and make some up that convict a guy, and that's wrong, and they shouldn't do that. But they do it because they're under pressure and they figure, well, the guy's guilty anyway. So that's where it comes from. It comes from a place of, you know, usually, generally speaking, like, well, we really want to catch this guy, but you can't do that. You're not doing anybody's favors. And now we're reaping the wind of that because someone's exploiting that weakness. John Kerry on climate refugee protection. If there is no ability to live somewhere, you're very much a refugee. John Kerry, you know, I've lost 100% respect for him. He's a complete tool, an utter tool of the establishment. You know, for a guy who threw his Vietnam medals over the White House fence, like the young John Kerry, seemed to have principles. This John Kerry, bought and sold. Bought and sold. Talks about getting rid of all CO2 emissions, like 100% of CO2 by such and such a date. And like he actually said that. You can't get rid of all the CO2. The plants will die. But, you know, he just doesn't seem to care. He seems half asleep wherever he goes. Doesn't seem like he pays attention to anything. Doesn't seem like he knows anything. So glad I didn't vote for that guy. I was getting Nader on the ticket. People thought I was nuts. But yeah, this is the guy who lost to George W. Bush. You know, the second time. Washington Post's Jennifer Rubin, who pretends to be a conservative, says Republicans don't want good things to happen, even for their own people. I've heard she pretends to be a conservative. And Dave Rubin keeps pointing out that he's not related to her, which is funny. That's a terrible thing to say just in general. It's not true. Republicans are just politicians like you know. Some of them are horrible, and some of them are good, and some of them are just lame. From the Gateway Pundit, Friday Funnies, Never Trumper Jeff Flake says GOP desperately needs people like Liz Cheney. No, they do not. We need to get rid of all the neocons, and thankfully Jeff Flake is out. Facebook, oh, I must have missed this one. From reclaimthenet.org, Facebook deletes 120,000 member group where people posted stories of alleged adverse vaccine reactions. Excuse me. Not good. But, you know, at this point, have you not gotten the message? Don't use Facebook for your Facebook groups. Okay? Just don't use them. Don't use Facebook. I promote on it, but that's about it. I'm not going to create a group. I'm not going to spend my time. I'm not going to spend a dime on Facebook. To me, it's a waste of money because Facebook was the first, I think, social media platform, if I'm not mistaken, that gamed the algorithm so you couldn't be seen. Used to be you could post something on Facebook, it'd go viral, but now it seems like you got to pay money. That's from the Gateway Pundit. I don't know if that's true. I'll have to look into that one. Biden's climate change requirements cut 90% of red meat from diet. Americans can only eat one burger per month. That's from the Gateway Pundit. I don't know. How's he going to enforce that? How's he going to stop that? I don't think so. I mean, he can recommend it. He could say, you know, yeah, let the progressives wither and go Vegetarian, I say. Blinken to allow pride flag to fly at U.S. embassies. From Newsmax. I don't really trust Newsmax all that much, but I could totally see it. I don't have a problem with it. If they want to fly the pride flag, who cares? I don't know what it has to do specifically with the United States, other than the Biden administration is probably pushing the same woke agenda onto other countries. They're going to resent us for it. Please don't do that. Let other people in other countries make up their own mind and develop accordingly. You know, like in Star Trek, the Federation's not supposed to interfere with another culture and let it develop normally. Maybe we should adopt that kind of hands-off approach, you know, live by the example, let other people see us and go, oh, we'd like to be like that. That seems to have worked in the past, but you can't tell that to progressives who want everybody to think like that. DC's Cop Snapback shocks heckler who asked, "Are you gonna kill me like you did Micaiah Bryant?" Okay. I don't know why you would say that to a DC cop, because it happened in Ohio and Micaiah was going to stab another girl. Like, why? It's just more headlines, I guess. Ohio State law professor calls for abolishing the police. Of course you do. Of course you do. Look, police officers, you kind of did some of this to yourself. I mean, your bad reputation, you know, it would have been a different world if you had a pretty stellar reputation and then this happened. You know, back in the days of 9/11, when everybody was worshiping cops and firefighters and soldiers like they walked on air, you know, it was overblown. It was, and there were still abuses. There's always been abuses with cops. Anybody in authority is going to abuse their authority to some degree. What we need with cops is we need to take away some of their authority, and we need to take away some of their responsibilities. And you do that by legalizing drugs and prostitution so people don't get taken to jail over pot or whatever. You do that by respecting the Constitution, making the cops, this is what they swear an allegiance to, the Constitution, to protect the Constitution of the United States. But they've jimmied so many holes and backdoors in it, and that is mostly state level prosecutors who want their numbers up, and the cops too, and the unions don't help either. So you guys got a lot of problems, and that's where it all is. It's all in the top. It's all in the administration. Very little of it, I think, is training. I think if this was administrated correctly, if the cops were administrated correctly, we wouldn't have nearly as many problems, because you just wouldn't have, you wouldn't have cops that would get hired after they had a poor record. They just couldn't get hired after a while. They would have such a bad rep. No. Now what are you going to do? You're trying to defund the police. Minneapolis is tried to get rid of the police. A bunch of them quit. You're allowing these lawsuits. Derek Chauvin completely demoralized these guys. Completely demoralized it. And it's also, too, what the Black Lives Matter, Antifa, Marxist types want. They want to demoralize and destabilize the state. All they're really doing is a bunch of damage that won't be undone for another 10, 20 years. So we have to look this in the eye and fix it now before it gets worse. From the Gateway Pundit, another humiliation on the world stage. Idiot Joe Biden, I love the Gateway Pundit's headlines. Idiot Joe Biden is the only one wearing a mask during a virtual climate change discussion with world leaders. Well, that makes sense. He's lost his damn mind. And he's probably the only one stupid enough to keep it on. So, if it's the typical public access people who run Biden's television, maybe there are people sitting next to him, but you can't see them. which would be another mistake on their part, but they just don't know how to frame anything. Can the Biden administration hire one guy who has experience in video? Just one? I mean, I don't know how many times he's given a speech, and it's like a shot of the podium at a slight angle, and Biden's not there, and it lingers for several minutes, and then you hear tap, 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 and then finally Biden walks into the frame. It's like, what is the place, empty? You don't want to present him that way. What you want to do is either wait until he gets to the podium and just fade up on him and the podium and then have him all ready and go, hello, my fellow Americans. Or if you're going to have that shot, then at least do a pan so we can see where the hell he is and why no one's standing around him. Like, Trump used to come out of the back room into the press corps room. Like Biden's like in a room by himself, it appears. So it just doesn't look good. The optics look terrible. White House says Columbus police shooting will push them to fight systemic racism. Why? From law officer. That was a perfectly justified shooting. That girl was going to kill another girl. Why would you pick this case? Are you trying to screw it up? Is it the policy of the White House now to double down on the worst possible scenario? There's all kinds of scenarios where the 7-year-old girl who was killed in a McDonald's drive-thru, that one, no one would oppose you using that as a rallying call. But that wasn't a police shooting. It was a gang shooting. This is ridiculous. That cop shot that girl because she had a knife and was about to kill. I mean, she's winding up. It's an amazing shot. That one I don't know. There's other headlines here you might want to check out yourself on Gap. Joy Bihar on Columbus shooting. Police should shoot the gun in the air. Stop killing teenagers. That would have never worked. She was literally winding back when she was shot. She had wind back. Shooting in the air, I don't even think she would have noticed. What does that do? Yeah, that might scare you, Joy Bihar, who lives in a wonderful world isolated from everybody. Ain't gonna work for someone who lives in a bad neighborhood and hears gunfire all the time. Certainly ain't gonna work for somebody who was so enraged they picked up a knife to stab people with. There is a bigger problem here that needed to be addressed before this girl ended up with a knife trying to stab people. And the people in the neighborhood, one of the girls at least was interviewed and said, yeah, the cops saved us. What are these idiots trying to do? I just don't get it anymore. I mean, it's amazing. Yeah, so many forbidden headlines. Biden, climate change has upended the lives of millions of Americans. No, it hasn't. What has upended the lives of millions of Americans are the lockdowns and the continued lockdowns. We're still kind of locked down. New Jersey, everything's halfway. We're halfway between New York and Florida, like not in distance. I'm saying in terms of the lockdown. We've got a bunch of restrictions, not as many as New York, and we got some freedom of, I mean, it's ridiculous. What's the point of having a halfway lockdown? What's the point? Most places now are functioning with a halfway lockdown. Even if you took that away, I think most places wouldn't fill it up again. Their customers wouldn't come. They'd be too afraid. Do you think anybody right now, after this fright fest, is going to go into a restaurant and be shoulder to shoulder with people? Maybe at their own table with their friends who are all vaccinated. And that's the other thing. If you're vaccinated, again, if you want to get people vaccinated, come out and say, listen, once we get to this percentage of vaccination will have herd immunity, and then we'll let loose the lockdowns. If Phil Murphy wanted New Jersey to be vaccinated, all he would have to do is say, if X amount of people get vaccinated, I'll unlock the state. Now, I wouldn't totally trust his numbers, but at least that would be a commitment to opening the state. He seems determined to drag his feet as long as possible. And Biden is right behind him. Going off into climate change, like, what are you talking about? Who has been upended by climate change? Like millions of Americans? Who? Where are these millions of Americans who had to move, I don't know, out of Florida because it was too flooded, or, out of Texas because it was too hot or something? I don't see it. What is he talking about? He's off his nut. A video. Portland woman laments the destruction of Popeye's restaurant by BLM rioters. Well, that's from InfoWars. That's kind of a funny headline. Yeah, a lot of places have been destroyed in Portland. I say get out of it. Ted Wheeler is not going to save you. He's never going to save you. He just wants to be king of the crap pile, I guess. I don't know why anyone would move their business to Portland. Eventually, it's going to get taken down or damaged or whatever. You're going to have to factor that into your business now. Or you're going to have to turn it into a walled fortress that they can't get near or destroy. Just about out of headlines here. Ooh, this is bad. Frost blast decimates French vineyards. May slash total wine output by 1/3. Look out, Karen. Wine prices going up. Everything's going up. So, Josh Hawley and Mike Braun introduce a bill to require the Biden administration to declassify information related to the beer virus origins. Ooh, I support that. Let's make that happen. Something else to write to your congressman about. That's from Breitbart. BLM. Nancy Pelosi's remarks on George Floyd so damn disrespectful. Yeah, it's so damn weird, I'd say. I mean, to thank a guy for dying for social justice, he didn't intend to die. Nancy, he didn't stand there and go, well, that's it. I'm dying for social justice. Go ahead and kill me. He didn't do that. He was, well, let's not go over it again. It's just, good. I'm glad BLM's going after her. But again, Nancy, you're reaping the win. When they finally throw you out, I don't know if they'll ever throw Nancy out of office. Seems like nobody can knock her out in terms of voting. Maybe she'll retire, when her term's up, like she said, but who knows. Ted Cruz, Republicans did not try to pack the court. You did not. There were plenty of other things you needed to do, though. Packing the court was not one of them. You might have to pack it if the Dems do it in 2022. But we'll see what happens. I don't think they're going to be able to pack the court. I think they will not get the votes they need. Energy Secretary Jennifer Granholm still holds millions in stocks of green businesses promoted by Joe Biden. Well, yeah. I'm sure Joe Biden's son has tons of stocks. I'm sure he's getting all the juicy information. He's buying all the right stocks. They're all going to enrich themselves. That's the way it works. All right. Now we're in the Fox News and the Daily Mail. Beer virus UK. Children as young as 12 will get a beer virus vaccine in September. DOJ mulling charges against Derek Chauvin for 2017 arrest involving 14-year-old boy. Well, that's bizarre. I mean, now they're going back in the past to punish him even more. I mean, the guy's already in prison. Are you that desperate to keep him in prison? Are you that shaky on? I guess you would be, considering now the I forgot to mention this. One of the jurors, one of the alternates, came out and said, yeah, they were all afraid, and that was the vibe she got, or at least she was afraid, apparently. So, I suspected as much. I suspected that most of the jurors said, screw this, I'm not dying. I'm not dying for this guy, and they threw him under the bus. So I think it's going to be overturned in appeal. There's so many things. So maybe this is the DOJ. We'll keep him in jail another way. So this way there won't be a riot. That's smart. Duh. NYC protesters vandalized statue with ACAB graffiti after chaos erupts with multiple arrests. Thankfully, they arrested somebody in New York for a change. Things are getting so bad, the cops are actually arresting people again. They wrecked the park and cops arrested. There was a big brawl. De Blasio is an absolute disgrace. Another guy who really ought to be charged. I hope, my hope is, and this is my very optimistic hope, 2022, the Republicans take back Congress. 2024, Trump or DeSantis or both take back the executive, and we could finally go back and get these guys. And guys like de Blasio and Cuomo and all these governors who ruin people's lives for their politics. Just so they could, Murphy too. I hope they investigate them all, but it's a lot of work to be done before we're at that point. Ben Shapiro hits Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez on catcalling claims she didn't want to look like she was afraid. I don't understand what that's going on. AOC said that he catcalled her in his debate challenge. Okay. I don't really see Ben Shapiro doing that, but, I suppose it's possible. But AOC is pretty hyperbolic. She says things all the time that don't make any sense or have zero truth in them. So I would lean towards that Ben Shapiro maybe said something maybe a tiny bit aggressive, and AOC immediately seized upon it to say, oh, well, he's triggering me or whatever. She's an empty suit, as they say. And finally, police woman stabbed to death inside police station in France before attacker is shot and killed. That's terrible. It's terrible, but that's the way Europe's going these days. It's just awful, As bad as you might think the cops are here, they're 10 times worse in Europe. And by worse, I mean they're completely ineffectual and they run away when a big crowd comes, and the first people they protect are themselves. And, they're more concerned with people on Facebook and Twitter saying bad things than they are with actually arresting criminals, in my opinion. I think that's it. Oh, there's one more headline. Wokeness reaches the final frontier. NASA shifts focus to from space to diversity. So, everything's being taken over by the woke, including NASA. So, whatever. Go ahead. Hire a bunch of people based on their race and gender and sexual orientation. See how well that works. And then you volunteer for that capsule going up into space. I'll stick with Elon Musk and SpaceX. Thank you very much. I think they'll be a lot safer. Even though Tesla did have that crash recently, it wasn't good. But I'd sooner go with a private company anyway. They've got every incentive in the world to keep their customers safe. The U.S. government, they keep you safe-ish. But with wokeness invading everything, we got to really root it out. And just as a final thought, the best place to do that is to check out James Lindsay. He's really documented all the wokeness well, and he's got some solutions, and and it's all about the ground up. We got to start at the ground. We got to start at the school boards. We got to save the kids first, and we got to get the state and town level governments on board to route this thing. Just route it out, and finally, hopefully, at some point, when enough people are aboard the anti-woke side, it just won't be cool anymore, and most of these idiots will drop their pretense and go home. They'll stop tweeting on Twitter because it won't be cool anymore. It'll be cooler to make fun of people, And once we can make that cultural shift, hopefully things will start going back to normal. So, a little positive white pill to end the night. We'll see you tomorrow. Say goodnight, Joan. She's asleep.